Thank you, Marek and Anna, and hello to all, and welcome to this webinar, a special one, I would say. It marks a collaboration between the EUDA, ourselves, and also ESPAD. That, for the ones that do not know, it's the European School Survey Project on alcohol and other drugs. And today we are going to launch the summary findings of the 24 round, and it also marks 3 decades of monitoring of ESPAD running in over 40 countries. Just as a background information on the project, for the ones that might not be familiar with, ESPAD is one of the largest surveys on adolescent use and other risky behaviors, and collects comparable information on substance use among 15, 16-year-olds students. And in collaboration with us, UDA, it brings together really a wide variety of independent research teams in over 40 European countries. And we hope that this information, the data collected from students, will inform more effective and target youth policies across Europe. So today, the objective of this webinar is to run through the 24 findings of the ESPAD project with a focus on the 30 years of monitoring. And ESPAD, I would say, has evolved and also reflecting the dynamics of drug markets and changing reality of adolescents. So new topics have been brought in the different rounds of the survey. And this year, I think the study expands also into new areas like mental health, well-being, but also the reach of prevention interventions. Probably around this time now in our EUDA website, you will be able already to find the publication, so the summary findings translated in more than 30 languages. And I think I would like to stress we have 2 moments of publication of the 24 findings. So today, it marks the launch of the summary findings, multilingual summary online, but also with the update of the ESPAD data portal, which the colleagues will present later on. And then later in October, we will be launching the full report with the 24 results. I think it's very important to also acknowledge the work of CNR here, colleagues, all the work on the coordination of the project, and also on helping us out putting and publishing the summary findings. I have to acknowledge also the work of my EUDA colleagues, especially outside the communication department, for all the work and all the hours invested in putting out this product, which I think you will appreciate quite a lot. And I have to say, thank all the students, teachers, schools, and all the principal investigators in the different countries for their commitment, because without them and their time, we would not be able to publish these results. So it was mentioned before, during the event, there will be interpretation from English into Arabic and French. And here I would like to thank the support from the UDA project U4MD2. And I will just briefly introduce the speakers we'll have with us today. So I will start with Sabrina Molinaro, who is the ESPAD coordinator and the research director at the National Research Council of Italy, CNR. Elisa Benedetti, the ESPAD project manager and researcher also at CNR. And Sonia Chehai is the ESPAD communication manager and researcher at CNR. And I'm also very happy that we have with us today John Marsden, who is the head of addictions department at King's College London and editor chief of the scientific journal Addiction, who will, after the presentation of the summary findings, will give his own views and reflections on the results. I would welcome participants using the chat during the webinar, but I would ask people to engage with courtesy and respect. And if you have questions for the speakers, for the different speakers, please use the Q&A chat box and not the chat per se for that. So I will immediately pass the floor to Sabrina, who will be the first speaker of today, and then we will follow with the further speakers. So thank you, Sabrina, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joao. Thank you for the introduction. Together with Elisa and Sonia, we are really, truly excited to give you this sneak peek of the new ESPAD 2024 results. That's something that we were waiting for long. And we, as Joao say, we all together with all the ESPAD community, we try to do it in very few times in order to give you some result before of we usually use today with the ESPAD result. But before diving into the emerging trends, allow me to join the Joao greetings, and I want to thank those who make this project possible. First of all, as Joao say, the big thank is for the all ESPAD principal investigators who have voluntarily collect the data in their countries, and of course to the school that participate in the study. And the special thanks goes to the members of the steering committee that dedicated their time and expertise to develop this summary that we are going to present today. And of course, we are also deeply grateful to EUDA, which support the ESPAD study at the institutional level and welcome us in its home, ensuring the long-term sustainability of the project. And our deep greetings to Joao, that is the ESPAD representative from EUDA, and is always with us in every step that we need to face in this challenge. We also like to thank our institution, of course, the National Research Council of Italy, which since 2016, when we were elected as ESPAD coordinators, has allowed us to invest a lot of resources into this important and ambitious effort. And just the last one, above all, we want to express our deepest thank to our amazing colleagues, Rodolfo Cotechini, Stefania Pieroni, Marco Scalese, Giada Anastasia, and Alice Berti, who have worked tireless in these last months for deliver the ESPAD trend database and to update the ESPAD data portal that will be launched today, and drafting with us the summary of the content. So now let's dive into the new data and explore what they reveal, if it works. So we try to go ahead with the slide, but of course it doesn't work. Okay, we are here. I'm going to give you just a really quick snapshot of the objective of the ESPAD study, that are to collect cross-national, as Joao said, cross-national representative data, comparable across countries and over time. That's the real treasure of ESPAD, and ESPAD trend database work in order to permit it to all the research community, and also to advance the scientific knowledge of adolescent substance use, and to investigate the new addictive behavior, and to support evidence-based policy and practice, and also to expand the research network, the international collaboration network. ESPAD, as Joao says, started in 1995 as an independent collaborative study. We already done 8 cross-sectional surveys. About 800,000 students, 16 years old students, were surveyed in more or less 50 countries involved. You can see from the map how many countries during the time attend to the ESPAD study, and in 2024 we surveyed more or less 114,000 students in 37 countries. Now, the methodology of ESPAD is relatively simple because we try to do it in very restrictive way. We used to collect data every 4 years. So just for 2024, we decided to postpone 1 year the data collection in order to adjust our schedule with the HBSC schedule. That was a gentleman agreement that we decided to do for the HBSC collects, in order to have every second year some fresh data on behavioral risk factor among students in Europe. And the sample must be nationally representative of a student reaching age 16 in the year of the data collection. And the primary sampling unit is the school class. We collect the data using a self-administrated questionnaire, and we have the questionnaire composed by a core questionnaire part similar, the same in all the country involved, and some optional questions that someone used and some other not. Now, finally, we can move ahead with the real results. And we are going to start with smoking and vaping, because I think that you will be shocked from the first result, because when we look at the tobacco consumption, the traditional tobacco consumption, what we see is that we observe a very strong decline since many years. We start to collect data in 1995, as I said, and the big changement was that after 2019, female surpass male traditional cigarette use. That's something that was really impressive. But when we look together with the traditional cigarette use with the e-cigarette use, we notice immediately that we come back more than 10 years in prevention effort, because the market of nicotine and tobacco use. In fact, the trend is changed completely, because when we had, and here we only look at e-cigarette, but if we put together also the other device for the use of the tobacco and also the nicotine pushes, the prevalence rise much more. So as you can see, when we look at the e-cigarette, the female use is higher than the male one. That's something impressive, because they started to use these devices very early. And actually, the current use is revealed by the 22% of students in both gender. What we learn from vaping and smoking is that the progress in reducing the tobacco consumption was registered many years ago, but right now the current panorama fuels concern of the dual use of this kind of different way to use nicotine and tobacco product. And what else, that the e-cigarette uses rise sharply among adolescents, with rising rate of early initiation and daily consumption. And the early initiation persists, particularly among girls, with daily smoking rates at the age of 13 or younger, and has increased in the recent years. Let's move to alcohol use, and also in this pattern of use, we observe a decline in the consumption, but in the meantime, we observe an improvement in the use of girl compared with the use of boys. And also, when we look at the heavy episodic drinking, the gender gap is narrowing too. That's something really, really impressive, just because we start to observe it after the COVID. At the end of the day, we also discovered that 33% of ESPAD students reported having their first alcoholic drink at the age of 13 or first. And when we look at the risk consumption of alcohol, and I'm talking about binge drinking and intoxication, we look at many differences through Europe. We always have Denmark at the top level of the rate, and both regarding the binge drinking and the intoxication. As you can see, the rate, the difference in the rate is huge through the Europe, and there are some different pattern of use. And as you can see, in this area seems to be very high, the habit to some kind of risk alcohol way to use. So what we learn about alcohol, the trend data show a steady decreases, and there is a large variation among countries and girls. Also, in this way, show a more stable trend with sign of increasing, especially in heavy drinking pattern. And the idea is that the prevention effort must increase the target girl to address early and risky drinking behavior. And moving ahead to cannabis and other illicit drugs, also here we observe a strong decline in the substance use through the Europe, but what shocked us was not only the decline in the illegal substance use, but also that this decline is much more to consider related to cannabis decline use. That's something really, really interesting, just because we know that in the last few years, many countries move ahead with some new regulation regarding the cannabis use in order to depenalize or legalize the use of this substance. So when we look that in this young group of students seems to decline the use of cannabis, we start to think about, and that's something that we will go in deep. In contrast, the use of the other substance seems to be much more stable. And as you can see, is not so different from the last year. So the decline, the general decline seems to be related to the cannabis decline use. But in the meantime, we know that students say that it's very easy for them to find cannabis. Which kind of other illegal substances they use more? The first one that we put is that we want to underline is the use of pharmaceutical without medical prescription. That's something really interesting, because it's something that is going to grow up in European students, and as you can see, female use is higher, much more higher than male use. That's something that we need to take in consideration. And the second level, there is the inhalants, and then synthetic cannabinoids and nitroxic oxide. I'll never be able to say the name in English, sorry for that. And all the other new psychoactive substances. But for all of these substances, what is interesting to say is that the gender difference prevalence is really slightly, and in many cases, female use is higher than the male. And for the traditional substances, as you can see, like crack, heroin, synthetic opioids, etc., the male prevalence is double respect the female one. Moving ahead to cannabis, something happened with my, I'm sorry. I can go ahead with your, I think I don't have the possibility
Anna,
to go
could you
ahead.
pause, please?
Anna, we have a problem with my connection as usual. Can you give Elisa the chance to go ahead, please? Or go ahead with the next slide. Can you hear us?
Yes, give me 1 second.
Okay. Okay, what I was saying is that if we move ahead with cannabis, I'm sorry for that, but that's the
And give it to Sonia. I cannot find it.
Sonia? Okay, no problem. We are here. Just a second. Okay, when we look at the cannabis, it doesn't work. Anna, can you go ahead for me, please, if it's possible? Okay, when we look at cannabis, what we found, as I said, is that it seems that the gender gap is going to narrow in again and again during the time. And at the same time, it's interesting to underline that 2.4% of students reported they had first used cannabis at the age of 13 or younger. Next one, please. Thank you. When we look at the high-risk cannabis use, and we screen it using a simple screening test, 2.3% of students with boys that more than twice to girl to be at risk, we found many differences through Europe regarding the problematic cannabis use. In fact, we have the prevalence almost 6% in Czechia and in Slovakia, and we have some countries very, very low prevalence of problematic cannabis users. But also the perceived availability of cannabis dropped sharply during the time. That's something else that is very strange related to the fact that, as I said, there are some countries that move ahead with new regulation. Looking at the new psychoactive substances, about 3% of students report lifetime use of this kind of substances, and much more used are synthetic cannabinoids, but followed by synthetic catechins and opioids. Also, in this group of substances, gender difference vary by country, but in many countries the same or very, very slowly. And going ahead with inhalants, what we found is that they are around 6.4% among students, with big differences through the countries, with Sweden in this case at the top of the countries, and Kosovo the smaller, with the smaller prevalence. And as I said, we test for the first time the nitroxic oxide in 18 countries because it seems an emerging trend, and we found that 3.1% of students reported that they lifetime use. Closing my presentation with pharmaceutical for not medical use. As I already showed you, here the prevalence in increasing a lot since 2019, and the female use is much more higher than the male one. It seems that the much more common pharmaceutical are tranquilizer or sedatives, but followed by painkillers. And in both these kind of pharmaceutical, the female prevalence is higher than the male one. We also test anabolic steroid use that is lower, and in this case is higher in the boys than in the girl. What's the lesson learned from this substance? Of course, cannabis remains the most used illicit drug, but both the lifetime and the current use reached this year the lowest levels since 1995. So that's something really historical, I think. And the use of illicit other than cannabis has remained relatively established. That seems that this new generation, the Gen Z, seems to have a completely different pattern to use substances. And as I show you, what it seems to be really different is the increasing in the female use of these substances that drive us in the idea that we need to rethink some prevention program gender tailored. So I think I have done. I leave the floor to Elisa that will talk about all the behavioral addiction.
Yes. Good morning, everyone, and thanks also on my behalf for being here. As Sabina said, I'm going to present some results, the first key results regarding risk behaviors, in particular what we do investigating ESPAD, are gambling, gaming, and social media use. So in today's presentation, we will present a few selected results regarding those behaviors. Starting with gambling, I need to say that we first started to monitor it in 2015, and since then, with time, we realized that students do not fully understand the definition of gambling as such. So what we do is asking for the engagement in 4 different types of games. The main ones, so slot machines, sport betting, sport and animal betting, lotteries and cards. This leads to a prevalence which in 2024 is of about 1/4 of all European students aged 16. So 23% of adolescents gambled in the past year. And regarding the mode through which they gamble, physical gambling, so gambling in physical places remains prevalent, although we are observing a shift towards online gambling. So overall, the level of gambling over years hasn't changed much, but the composition, so what adolescents do while gambling, is changing. The current picture is that of a high cross-country variability, and this variability, so the difference between countries, is increasing over time to the point that we, in 2024, Italy scored first with almost half of 16-year-old students gambling, while we have countries like Georgia where the prevalence accounts only for 10% of the student population. Looking back, what can we say about the past in order to try to forecast the future? As said, gambling prevalence has remained high and rather stable over the years. But what is is also denoted by a strong gender gap. So you see that the prevalence among male is much higher than that among female. But this gender gap, as observed by Sabrina, for some substances is narrowing, and it is narrowing due to online gambling, which is increasing and becoming more popular, especially among girls. What is also changing, sadly, is that although gambling engagement has remained stable, the proportion of gamblers who develop a harmful behavior is increasing, and today accounts for almost 9% of our student population, and this increase is marked among girls. So looking a bit more into detail, we see here in the bars denote the prevalence among male and female students. So we do observe that online gambling is rapidly reaching the level of land-based gambling, and also the difference between male and female students in land-based gambling is rapidly diminishing, and it is the case also for online gambling, although the prevalence among female students is still half of that among male. Regarding the two different forms of gambling, so land-based and online, we also see that the preference for specific types of gambling changes. So online, what is worrying is that sport betting is taking the stage. We know that it's an important and urgent matter from the US up to Asia, and we see it also in Europe, while in land-based gambling, lotteries are still the preferred type of game. So overall, what can we say in few words about gambling in terms of lesson learned? We have seen in recent years many countries moved and implemented stricter regulations regarding gambling, specifically to protect minors, but we see that this hasn't changed much overall. What we do see is that there are big differences across countries, and these differences might be due to those restrictions and prevention interventions. We know that individual level policies are not gathering much evidence in terms of effectiveness, while system frame policies demonstrate to be more effective. This might be a factor. We also observe a rapid growth in online gambling, particularly among girls. And still regarding differences among countries, which is one of the richness of ESPAD, we also see that there is no a unique and strong link between the prevalence of gambling participation, which is important in terms of public health, and the prevalence of excessive and problem gambling. So we observed high prevalence countries where harmful gambling is less widespread, while we observe countries with smaller prevalence, but a big proportion of adolescents who are have already signs of problematic behavior. Lastly, we observed an increase in harmful gambling, which is something that worries us and really requires to be tackled. The next results we are going to show you are those related to gaming. So we know that gaming, particularly after COVID, the COVID pandemic has been rapidly increasing. In 2019, it was 70%. Now almost 80% of students use video games. And interesting enough, with respect to the past, we also observed that the difference between school and no-school days is diminishing. Looking at gender differences, we see that girls are becoming closer to this behavior, and a lot of them are engaging in gaming as well. So the gender gap is diminishing. And in parallel, also when we look at risk gaming behavior, we do see an increase in prevalence among girls. So this leads us to the map showing the situation in 2024. We know that about 1/4 of European students perceive their gambling behavior as problematic, although boys are more than twice as likely as girls to report problematic behavior. We see also that the prevalence among girls is increasing, and we do observe a high variability across countries, not only in terms of gaming engagement and at-risk gaming, but also with respect to gender differences. So we do have countries where the gender gap is really big, like Germany, but we also have countries where girls already score more percentage points than boys, so countries like the Netherlands. Regarding social media use, we decided to stop asking our students, which are overwhelmed by questions anyway, about the screen time connection, because we know that it makes little sense today when adolescents are almost all the time connected. But we do investigate signs of problematic behavior. And what we see is rather worrying, because we have 47% of adolescents who have an at-risk social media use profile, and this trend is increasing. Differently from gaming, and this is something that we have observed also in the past, the prevalence is higher among girls, but even in this case, the gender gap is narrowing. So the prevalence of at-risk social media use is rather stable among female, while it's slowly increasing among male. In terms of lesson learned, we are seeing a sort of alignment, a convergence between genders, with female engaging more in gaming and boys using more social media. We also see a rapid increase in the problems related to an excessive use. We should not be looking at those results individually, because we should really try to make a link with gambling, and I believe this is a commitment that ESPAD has, because we know that the boundaries, especially between gaming and gambling, are becoming blurred with gambling-like features inserted in video games. And also, thanks to the study of the past years, there's an increasing evidence of a gateway effect between, for example, loot boxes and gambling. So overall, I believe we did well to start investigating at-risk behaviors, although our students might not be that happy, and we will continue doing so in the future. I'm leaving the floor to Sonia for the new topics that characterize this data collection.
Thank you, Elisa. Yes, I'm going to present two important novelties within ESPAD. In 2024, the WHO 5 Wellbeing Index was introduced in order to assess adolescent mental health for the first time. And this represents a significant addition within the survey, offering a simple yet validated tool for measuring the mental status across countries. According to our ESPAD 2024 findings, 59% of students reported good well-being. However, there are notable regional differences because higher levels of mental well-being scores were observed in Northern Europe, while the lowest are reported in areas that are affected by ongoing conflicts or with limited access to health services, mental health services, such as Ukraine. Gender differences also are also evident. Overall, boys report better mental well-being than girls, with the largest gender gaps unfavorable to girls found in Italy, Poland, and Sweden. And this also aligns with the latest WHO evidence. There is another important innovation within the 2024 ESPAD survey, which for the first time also gathered data on students' participation in prevention programs, as already also Joao anticipated. And the results show that 72% of students reported taking part in at least one prevention activity in the past 2 years. And among all the various initiatives, the most common are awareness raising events, information sensitization events, particularly regarding licit and illicit substances, which remain widespread across countries. But notably, skill-based prevention activities that are like interactive trainings are predominantly implemented in Western and Southern Europe. More in details, we can see that more than half of ESPAD students attended awareness information events on substance use or risk behaviors. Among the various topics, alcohol is the most frequently addressed, followed by tobacco and other illicit drugs. In contrast, non-substances related risks such as gambling, gaming, and those Elisa told us before, problematic internet use, social media use are the least frequently addressed. Gender differences also emerge with girls that tend to participate more frequently in substance-related prevention activities, while boys are more frequently involved in programs focusing on behavioral addictions. Beyond awareness raising activities, interactive training activities represent a key component of prevention effort. These programs that are skills-based programs and which are generally recognized as more effective involve over half of the ESPAD students, 55%, and aim to strengthen personal and social competencies. And in terms of lesson learned, of course, mental well-being is a crucial concern for adolescents in general, and especially in the context of post-pandemic recovery and ongoing conflicts. With significant gender and regional disparities, as we saw, the inclusion of the WHO 5 Wellbeing Index provides a valuable tool to monitor and continue to monitor youth mental health across ESPAD countries. Our findings highlight the need for targeted mental health support for young people in general, but specifically in vulnerable regions and among adolescent girls. And girls, turn again. Regarding prevention programs, most students have participated in at least one prevention intervention. That is the good news, but not that activities are evidence-based. Awareness events are the most common and show gender differences, while skills-based programs, which are considered more effective, as we said, are concentrated in specific European regions. And a focus for future ESPAD rounds might be the extent to which the prevention interventions being provided can be considered evidence-based or not. Another important news, another development I would like to offer you is that we updated the ESPAD data portal with 2024 data. In order to support international comparative research and to inform evidence-based prevention strategies, as we said, and also to reinforce the ESPAD role as a key reference for monitoring youth risk behaviors, the ESPAD data portal provides a comprehensive tool, a very inclusive tool, and data access. Launched in 2024, it enables open access to explore the 30 years of cross-national data. Also, Sabrina mentioned, attracting over 40,000 visitors annually and providing interactive maps, historical trend analysis, thematic search capabilities, and also an advanced analytical tool available after registration. Of course, I won't go through this now, but I just want to show you that it's really intuitive and easy to use. One can easily select the indicators of interest and choose among the available display options. And what I want to say is that all the 2024 new ESPAD data are available on these data portals starting from now, in conjunction with this webinar and also with the publication of the multilingual summary provided by the EUDA website as an inclusive anticipation of all the 2024 ESPAD results. Thus, we want to encourage you all to explore our data and make use of it. Let's conclude. I think we can go to the conclusion. Well, with the ESPAD 2024 evidence, we shed light on the evolving realities of adolescents' life across Europe, from risk behaviors to mental well-being. And our data reveal not only persistent challenges, but also important signs of progress, particularly, as Elisa said, regarding behavioral addictions, giving us as whole a strong foundation for action. By providing clear evidence-based insights, the ESPAD data equips policymakers, educators, public health professionals, and us all with actionable evidence to design more targeted and effective strategies, prevention strategies tailored to what is the real and diverse needs of today's youth. And lastly, but above all, ESPAD is continuously committed to set a standard in terms of methodology, in terms of scientific rigorousness, and in terms of social impact, helping us all to build a healthier future for the next generations. Thus, to conclude, I want to thank all the participants for their attention, and we look forward to our next important milestone, that is the publication of the ESPAD 2024 report in October. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina, Sonia, Elisa, for the very comprehensive and super interesting, at least I find it, presentation of the summary findings. I will immediately pass the floor to John Marsden as a discussant and also to have some of his reflections on what we just heard. So, John, please, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much. And I'd also like to extend my personal appreciation to Sabrina, Sonia, and Elisa for such a wonderful presentation today. It's quite humbling, isn't it? And hello to everyone, the many hundreds of folk joining from so many countries. What an amazing achievement the organizers have secured. Thank you everyone for devoting your time. I'm struck by just what a collective effort this has been. Where did those 31 years go? I'd like to finish my remarks by actually thinking about the time between 1995 and today, because I think it suggests a whole avenue of focus. I hope this collective effort, which spans so many countries, countless investigators, and the various institutional supporters, and the wider support from EUDA, and indeed yourself, Chair, that is just too numerous to list, may continue to bear such important fruit. You know, as the study marches towards 1 million participants, it is the most astonishing and welcome achievement to have such a continued capture among a population in this mid-adolescent period where we have the kryptonite effect of the family begins to fade and the peer group power begins to dominate. And that's something one could have said 31 years ago, but look at the march of things that I'll mention in a moment that characterize our modern world. I'm sure I'll only make reference to a couple of standout points that almost all of us will have thought as they listened to that astonishing presentation. I mean, I think in reverse, it was really welcome to learn about the arrival of the excellent WHO5 index as now hopefully a standard element in the survey data set for 2024. I think any of us that work in the university settings and who are personal tutors to young people have not failed to note a rise in anxiety and mood difficulties among young people, and concerns about reduced resilience to the stresses and strains of modern life, I think, are one of the prevailing risk factors for all populations, and that gets accented when one brings in other socio-demographic and inequality factors. It's also really great, beginning at the end, as it were, to actually hear that, you know, 70% or so of ESPAD members, let's use that collective now, recognize that they've taken part in a prevention, largely awareness raising approach. And we must continue to provide young people with factual information that isn't designed to evoke fear and stress, that it's designed really to provide people with the information that they need to make reflective and not impulsive choices. And so I applaud that effort. It's also good to hear about the prevalence of sort of social competence and management of risk intervention efforts that are focusing on the primary prevention phase. And I hope those can be widened so that they are not just in the sort of southwestern and northeastern corridor in the European continent, for example, and they become wider expressed. But then just starting at the very beginning, just a couple of things that stood out for me. We would expect to see a falling and then a rising of tobacco and electronic nicotine delivery systems. And I'm concerned that there is a possible future in which vapes and electronic delivery systems could become much more prevalent as mechanisms for delivering, for example, synthetic cannabis and other substances. We are not satisfied at all, are we, that the jury has decided on the risks and public health harms. It's a very complex space. It's often very embattled among people that work in that field who are on the subject of criticism for taking a view. I reserve the right to change my mind every half an hour if I need to. And I think I applaud the ESPAD effort to characterize prevalence and other factors that relate to the rise of e-cigarettes. On alcohol, what came out loud and clear was this third or so of people reporting heavy episodic drinking. The differences between Southern European and Northern European countries in these 31 years have changed beyond all recognition. And that continues to be a huge concern, I think, for those of us that work in a biomedical setting in terms of the brain health development of young people exposed, as we saw, from about age 13 for many respondents, to periodic heavy episodic drinking. Cannabis is an interesting picture, isn't it? One could also bring in concerns about adolescent brain development. I think that's sort of axiomatic in the sort of concerns that I would bring to mind there. But moving on to unauthorized or non-medical use of pharmaceuticals, I think it was 14% or so. I was astonished and concerned about that. My 4.5-year-old opened some asthma medication of mine recently, to my horror, in the kitchen and held up a tablet to me. And I just worry about, you know, safe storage of medicines and also how pharmaceutical products find their way into the hands of people that they were not medically directed. I think moving to, I mean, I'm fascinated. I wish I could have heard more about Gen Z or Gen Z. One of the great values of this enterprise, you know, spanning an entire generation, is to be able, as I've said to Sabrina and her colleagues, to be able to characterize the sort of footprint of use from the different lettered generational groups and how those preferences or interests have changed over time. I want to finish before actually centering slightly on gambling and gaming. I didn't think I would, as I was enjoying the invitation to join you today, but it became much more of a theme for me, which I'll end with. But electronic gaming machines are horribly addictive. They're manufactured with the best possible science to attract people so that they play longer and lose more. And the rise of online gaming and sports gambling and betting in particular is a new and concerning feature of about a quarter, as we heard, of the population surveyed last year. And the shift to online gaming brings huge challenges, I think, for policy to reduce exposure and reduce gambling, for example, but also prevention efforts. I was thinking as I was listening finally, gosh, what was it like in 1995? And of course, we had dial-up internet. It was limited. There was mostly text-based. So today it's ubiquitous, high-speed broadband, 5G, rich multimedia, cloud computing. I think I got my first mobile phone in 1998. It had a kind of wobbly aerial that you pulled out of it, and that broke in my car. And but we mainly had landlines, and we did have calls. I think there was fledgling SMS. Look at what we've got today. The computing power in my phone is bigger than the lunar landing module, presumably. Media, finally, and communications. We made phone calls. Many of us had faxes. Who has a fax anymore? They're gone. They're landfill. So all of that is to say that I think my hope is that ESPAD can begin to really occupy the risk factors that are embedded in the environmental context for these crucially sampled 15 and 16-year-olds. You know, we now live in an era of internet and mobile access where there's 24/7 online platforms, and those have amplified exposure to and availability of substances, and especially gambling and gaming. Our smartphones and apps are amazing, but they give portable private access to risky behaviors, but they can also be sources of support. But mobile gambling apps, I think, have normalized frequent and impulsive play. So I think for me, the technology, whilst astonishing, is now a vector for increasing the hazards for people that are involved in more frequent and harmful behavior. So I'm going back to referencing the harmful drinking subpopulation, those that are involved in online gaming, for example. And our technologies, social media, of course, must not be overlooked. The rise of, you know, compulsive checking of likes and short form video formats. So I'm a fan. I congratulate everyone involved. Our three superb speakers just now. I can't wait to hear about the learning that can flow from analyses of the person level risk factors that might be acquired before the survey, and then the interaction with the environmental factors and all of the hazards that are now being, you know, collected in the ESPAD survey. So I've probably gone on longer than I was invited to, but just to say it's an honor for me to listen and to contribute, and I wish everyone continued success.
Thank you, John, and I would add you as also 4 superb speakers. So thanks a lot for your thoughts and reflections on the data. And now I'll pass the floor to my colleague Marika, who will take care of the Q&As. You're muted, Marika.
I'm sorry. I was saying thank you, João, and thank you, John, and thank you all the presenters. I will go through the questions. Some are in the questions and answers. Some others are in the chat, and I will already apologize for the questions that we will skip. The first easy question is if there is a version in Italian. The translation was offered by colleagues in international cooperation projects, and these today are on French and Arabic. For the Italian version, you probably need to contact the researchers that are from Italy. Certificates, yes, you can have certificates. I was surprised not to see ketamine in the list of substances when its use is increasing in many countries. Is it included in pharmaceuticals? Who wants to answer? Sabrina, would you like to take this?
Of course. We look at ketamine in some specific countries. One of the optional questions that we have in the questionnaire. The ESPAD questionnaire is really big and full of questions. So we need to find a good balance between what is really high rate prevalence and what not. Honestly, in my country, for example, we look at the ketamine, the prevalence in this age range is around 1.5%, so it's not so high, and in many countries lower. So we have data, but only for a few countries.
Thank you very much. Another question by Elsa. Why is tobacco decreasing? Is it due to higher prices or awareness campaign? What explains the drop in cannabis use? Legalization, regulation, consumption rooms? Is legalization and regulation reduce use? Should stronger drugs be legalized too? This is a difficult question. And because I'm very bad, I ask these questions to John. Do you think, because our results cannot answer, this needs to have a discussion to answer these questions?
Gosh, well, I think there remain many factors. I think there has been huge peer norm changes over the span of the study, this entire generation, if you will, which has identified conventional tobacco, conventional nicotine delivery products, cigarettes, etc., as unappealing and as dangerous. It is important to note, though, that we've got quite a lot of other deliveries. We've got snus and pouches and so forth. So it is a diversified arena, and I think the wider concern that we would have in the sort of addiction science is just that that we've reached a point perhaps where many people who continue to smoke are very hard to treat and to engage in cessation efforts. And I think for a good while that was a landing zone for optimism for electronic cigarettes, that they would be quit aids. And I think the value of ESPAD and other targeted surveys is to really keep us focused on concerns about people who initiate to these admittedly less harmful, let's not put a percentage on it, let's never do that, but less harmful formulations that are nonetheless extremely addictive. And we know nicotine is one of the most sort of addictive, pure kind of stimulants, as it were, that are existing. But I think there are pockets of resistance, but nonetheless a general trend downwards. But it's hard to know if we will ever lose the organic compounds. I used to have a habit of saying that the future has to be synthetic and that all grown psychoactive drugs will disappear, and that has taken a turn for prediction in recent years in the US, for example, with pharmaceutical opioids and the fentanyls and nitazines and other horribly potent pharmaceuticals. So I suspect that is the direction we're going. And as I was mentioning, the vape type delivery system worries me greatly, and the synthetic cannabinoids that are beginning to be found in that delivery technology, many appear to be horribly carcinogenic.
Thank you very much. I pick another question. This is probably for the researchers. That is, do you think that the reduction in consume of cannabis can be linked to a rise in any other substances? Do you see any signals of this?
To be honest, actually, we didn't see any signals in that way. I mean, we see that there is a stable situation for all the other substances. That means that probably there is not a real transition. What we see, what we can hypothesize, but we have to go in deep in this hypothesis, is that some students, some young people move from organic cannabis to synthetic cannabinoid just because it's easy to find, you can buy online, and you don't have to face with some problem related to the smell of cannabis, and they don't really care about what they are using if they are not in deep involved in cannabis use. Now, what we know from the historical use of substances in young people is that the biggest part of young people use used to use cannabis and used to use only cannabis when we look at the illegal substances. Then there is a small part of students who used to try a lot of different substances. They don't care about which kind of substance they use. That means that probably in this part of student, we can find a sort of movement from cannabis to other substances. That's something that we have to look in deep, and especially in some countries where cannabis use declined much more than in others. So that's something that we will look in deep in the next step of the analysis.
There is another question about what do you think that the COVID-19 role was in terms of reducing the pro and the antisocial behaviors. The question is not very, very clear, but probably we can reason about the role that the COVID-19 may have had on the use of substances.
Yeah, for sure, the lockdown, what we call the time that we stay close in house, and especially for young people, had a big impact regarding many behavior risk factor. Not necessarily related to the substance use, much more with exposition to social media and gaming and gambling. That's something that we notice from our national studies, and that's something that it's revealed also from ESPAD study. I don't know if Elisa or Sonia would like to add something.
Yes, thank you, Sabrina. If I can add something, I think that we can also say through the ESPAD data that COVID restrictions were detrimental in terms of physical and exchange and relationships. And this is also something that we have to take into account when considering that a lot of drugs and substances are used in social events or in social occasions. So just that.
Thank you. And I see John has his hands rose.
Yeah, I mean, since we're celebrating so many years, it reminds me, I wrote an article for Esquire magazine, a very noble publication, a long time ago, and I said that the first casualty of pandemics is fear. And I think, I don't have data to hand, but I think one of the factors that I wish we had the WHO 5 as a panel right the way across the last decade. But I think I'm channeling some familial experience and local knowledge, perhaps. I think there was a lot of damage to mood and well-being and anxiety raised. And I think through the restrictions and the fear of the unknown. And I think it's possible that could have translated into, an increase in the use of certain substances as self-medicating or as to blunt affect, etc. So I don't think the pandemic did us any favors for our general resilience and outlook.
Thank you very much. There are several questions that are, in fact, for experts in prevention, which is very interesting because it shows how important our data to base our interventions. Many comments on the gender issues in the explanation of this data. Would you like to say something about it, Sabrina, that you didn't say it before?
Not really, because what we are really interested in looking at right now is to try to understand what is going on with other risk factor. I mean, now we only look at the prevalence, how they change, but probably what we'll found from the deepness analysis is to look at the associated factor with this changement in Gen Z female. I think that now from some previous analysis, what we found is that there is a less pressure from the peer and the higher pressure from the parents' influence. That's something really interesting from our side. And maybe that the relationship of women with family is different from the relationship that guys used to have with parents. So there are some idea that we would like to look at regarding all these data.
Another question about the collection of data is about if you are going to consider measuring social media app internet substance supply and accessibility. Do you think it will ever happen, Sabrina and colleagues?
Now, the story of the ESPAD questionnaire is always the same. We try to reduce the number of questions all the way, and we show up with the biggest questionnaire. So now we have to find, as I say, a good balance. We are more than 40 countries involved, and all country needs to or ask for had some part in the questionnaire. This year, we move ahead with the well-being and the prevention, and then we will see in 4 years what really will change. What I would ask to the attendants is to suggest us to reduce some item, because the students are very upset when they face with the questionnaire, and the questionnaire is so long, and all the time it's hard to answer all the questions. So I don't know what we will do in the next wave, but we are open to all proposals. Thank you for asking us.
Wow, probably this question is addressed in the web survey.
Yeah.
Is it, João Matias?
About the one on social,
Supply, the online, yeah.
it is not directly. We do cover a few questions on supply for different substances, but mostly the focus is on health related, let's say, questions and patterns of drug use. Yeah.
Thank you. There is a question specifically for Elisa Benedetti, although I see some difficulties in answering unless you are representing the lobby of the gaming industry. The question is, as gaming, gambling, and social media addiction increase, what effective regulations could be accepted by the industry lobbies?
The word effective and accepted, well, okay. Honestly, I don't know. Well, but this is my personal opinion that, generally speaking, prohibition alone doesn't prove so effective and not supported also by change, by really helping to change also the way adolescents approach these instruments. Regarding regulations concerning gaming and gambling, well, predominantly gaming, we are studying, we are assessing the situation in Europe with the Council of Europe, but for sure in this sector, like really regulating gambling like features inserted in video games could really make the difference. Then, of course, with respect to social media, I don't know to which extent they can be effectively regulated, but also because social media uses both a consequence and a cause of mental health challenges. So it's also important to the purpose of socialization. If we also think to the pandemic, what can be done, and this really in this area, the role of parents is really important, and the educators is helping to interpret messages given by influencers, by peers, and this is really linked no also to the other behaviors. If we think of viral challenges which resemble like betting money on challenges shared by peers. So in this sense a lot can be done. But as regards the acceptance by the industry, well, they have to accept it if it's done. So the
Thank
first
you very
step would be
much.
to try.
I was going through the other possible questions, but more or less, more of them are on the interventions. And this is unfair to ask you. You are presenting data, not interventions, and others have been already suggested. But I noticed that John has shared an article. So I call him in, asking also, we are going towards the end. I don't know, John, if you feel like you can give some concluding remarks on our behalf to this session today.
What an honor. That's absolutely charming of you, Marika. Thank you. Well, just to possibly on behalf of everyone who's taken time to join this really remarkable event, to express gratitude to everyone in the ESPAD family and our three fantastic speakers today. I was captivated by it. I can't wait to find reports in the future, not too far away, I hope, that really analyze several topics that I think have come out of this. The interplay between person and hopefully environmental level risk. I'd love to see more on the comorbidity or coincident use of different substances and gaming and gambling behaviors, for example. As we know, at least in adults, gambling and gaming is associated with alcohol and powder cocaine use, for example. So the idea of multiple hazardous and harmful behaviors within this huge data set would be astonishing to look at. And then possibly some correlations with exposure to prevention efforts, all the while, continuing to channel this really, exciting opportunity to look at the gender differentials and the geographical distribution of prevalence and risk and harm. So can't wait, guys. That I'm sure the analysis, I'm sure the computers are ready and the reports will flow. And but thank you again, Marika, for your very gracious invitation to join today.
Thank you to you, really, and for your help in also disseminating this data that, as we heard during the question session, are so needed also to design good interventions for prevention and young people. João, I give the floor back to you as a chair of this session.
Thank you, Marika. I mean, it has been my pleasure to share this session with four really brilliant speakers. Thanks, Sabrina, Sonia, Lisa, John. It has been great. The links to the data and the publication are on the chat. So I invite you all to go and you'll be able to see also the different translations. So hopefully in your national language. Also like to thank Marco and Anna for their help on setting up the webinar, and without you it wouldn't be possible, and also for the translators here. So thanks a lot, and wish you a nice rest of the day and see you soon.